sir.
David Jefferson Harris, Jr. Let it be recorded in deepest sorrow that David Jefferson Harris, Jr., former member of the Board of Governors and the Board of Trustees, died on February 5th, 2022, at the age of 80. David was a 1986 graduate of University College, Rutgers, New Brunswick. He was appointed as a charter trustee on the Board of Trustees, serving 2 full terms from 1993 to 2005. During his tenure on the Board of Trustees, he served as vice chair from 1996 to 1998 and chair of the Board of Trustees from 1998 to 2000. He was elected to the Board of Governors in 2000 and served a full term until 2006. During this time, David chaired numerous committees, including the Educational Planning and Policy Committee, the Building and Grounds Committee, as well as the Board of Trustees Executive Committee and many trustees advisory committees. David also contributed his experience in wise counsel as a member of the Governor's Committee on Intercollegiate Athletics, Governor's Committee on Audit, and the Joint Committee on Investments. A New Brunswick civil rights leader whose legacy involved advocating for New Brunswick's children, David's powerful and influential voice for justice and equality played an important role in the shaping of New Brunswick as it is today. A proponent of upward social mobility and the importance of early education, he put his heart and soul into his work as the executive director of the Greater New Brunswick Daycare Council and the May J. Strong Child Development Center, where he truly made a difference in the lives of others. David's devotion to children was evident as he served on the National Association for the Education of Young Children and was a member of the Central New Jersey Maternal and Child Consortium Advisory Council and the New Jersey Child Care Advisory Council. He also served on the Rutgers Community Health Foundation, Chair and Gavel Society, Garden State Association of Black Journalists, and the Regional Plan Association Board of Directors. An outspoken proponent for the greater good, David was a columnist for the Home News Tribune, where he inspired others to rise to the challenge of questioning and alleviating the burden of systems that result in perpetual poverty. Be it resolved, therefore, that as an expression of the board's grateful remembrance of David Jefferson Harrison Jr.'s dedication and service to Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, this memorial resolution shall be recorded in the minutes of the Board of Governors and the Board of Trustees, and a copy shall be sent to his family along with our heartfelt and deepest condolences. Board of Governors, Board of Trustees, Rutgers University. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any objection? By acclamation. Thank you very much. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start with a very quick update. We, in terms of Rutgers student body, are back in person after a brief pause in January for the Omicron wave. It's thrilling to have everybody back on campus, see the campus come back to life again. Let me start with the freshest news. As you may have learned, this week, Chancellor Provost Fran Conway announced that Rutgers New Brunswick is establishing a new financial aid initiative, the Scarlet Guarantee. They'll make Rutgers tuition free for New Jersey families with incomes under $65,000. The same program will significantly reduce tuition and mandatory fees for New Jersey family incomes under $100,000. For a family at the upper end of this range, tuition and fees will be no more than $5,000. Our Camden and Newark students have already had very similar and very successful tuition aid programs available for the past several years to the benefit of both students and the institution. Camden's is called Bridging the Gap, and Newark's is Run to the Top. The Scarlet Guarantee, which completes the jigsaw puzzle, and as far as this is concerned, for undergraduates, is made possible in significant part by Governor Murphy's Garden State Guarantee, which will apply to the 3rd and 4th years of college for families at those income levels. This is the most significant financial aid program from the state in many years. We are happy to say that it will make an outstanding Rutgers more accessible to more New Jersey families. Last week, I began a new tradition, and that is a budget address to the University Senate. This will be an annual February comment. A few highlights of my address. Given the pandemic's effect on both revenues and expenses, our return to normal in terms of budget will likely take multiple years. Tuition makes up 1/3 of our revenue stream, but we should not and will not look at raising tuition to match inflation or cover the 5.5% increase in salaries. We must look for other streams of revenue. There is limited flexibility in our budget since 65% pay salary and benefits and another 10% fund scholarships and fellowships, not to mention fixed costs such as insurance and keeping in compliance. Perhaps most noteworthy, I said that we need to change our way of speaking about certain areas that rather than talking of them in terms of subvention or deficit, we should consider them as institutional investments, areas such as the libraries, the humanities, and athletics. There are more areas, of course, but I mentioned those three specifically. As I said last week, speaking about athletics, for too long, we've labored under the illusion that Rutgers athletics will someday turn a profit. It is highly, highly unlikely it ever will. Instead, we need to see it as a commitment by the university that helps tell a compelling story about Rutgers, one that will inspire applicants, alumni, and friends to learn more about what we have to offer in the present day and in the future. A few leadership items. We've launched the search for a permanent vice president for university libraries and university librarian. As you may have seen since we last saw each other, Vanu Thakuriya stepped down as dean of the Blaustein School with Stuart Shapiro serving as interim dean. And Jonathan Potter announced that he will complete his deanship of the School of Communication and Information at the end of June. I'm pleased to say that Rutgers University Camden has earned federal designation as a minority serving institution. It's a very important accomplishment. Also, very significantly, for a brief time, it appeared that Rutgers Camden would lose its Carnegie R2 designation, Research 2 designation, but that was avoided through teamwork between our research Office of Research and the leadership in Camden to provide the documentation to keep the designation. So we're in good shape for now. I'm pleased to say that the Rutgers Summer Service Internship, the RSSI initiative that I announced at my inauguration, has been launched online. Current sophomores and juniors are encouraged to apply, and faculty and staff can nominate a student to participate. The initiative will give summer internship experiences at public service-oriented nonprofits and government offices, encouraging them to grow as active citizens. It's being run jointly by Eagleton Institute of Politics and the career offices at Newark, Camden, and New Brunswick. The last I heard that we are aiming for up to 150 spots. We have almost quadruple that in terms of applicants for the trial year. This is a fantastic outcome. Finally, I want to note that the Supreme Court is again taking up affirmative action in higher education, so we will be monitoring that in the coming months. The Supreme Court agreed last month to hear cases challenging the use of race as a factor in admissions at both Harvard and the University of North Carolina, a private and a public. We'll, of course, be paying particular attention to how the Supreme Court decides in terms of University of North Carolina. Mr. Chair, that completes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next, we have remarks from a member of our faculty, Dr. Nancy Wolf. Nancy, you are always welcome here. I'm pleasantly surprised to see that you wish to speak on the proposed resolution authorizing an increase to the public exigency contract with Vault Medical Services of New Jersey. So over to you.
Whoops. Okay, Chair Engelson, I am sorry to inform you that I'm here to talk about the pay equity issue, and I'm asking you whether I have permission to speak.
You do for the normally allocated 2 minutes, please.
I will try to speak as quickly as possible. Good afternoon. In October, I was here to tell you that critical information needed to understand the administration's pay equity adjustment methodology remained cloaked in mystery. I came back in December and told you the same thing, and now I'm back yet again repeating myself. In fairness, some progress has been made in recent weeks. Over the weekend, after a bit of misdirection and the need to combine information from a variety of disparate documents, we are able to get halfway to the goal line of understanding the administration's pay equity methodology, halfway after 8 months. This conspicuous delay in providing information struck me as particularly odd, given one of the 3 basic value propositions for President Holloway's administration is a determination to make Rutgers less complex. Nothing about the pay equity process, however, has been made less complex. In fact, if it had been made less complex, I would not have to be here telling you again, over and over again, the same thing. Last week, as President Holloway just announced or mentioned, he announced the annual effort to broadly articulate the university's finances. This commendable initiative was, according to his address to the Senate, because, quoting, the intentions, aspirations, and realities that are woven into the university's budget will become significantly clearer to anyone who is curious about where we are headed and why. He also noticed that this was an educative opportunity through which members of the community can better understand the various dynamics of the budget, so they in turn can offer constructive advice on how to improve this community. These words, again, could not be more relevant to the pay equity process. While the university's budget is undeniably important at the macro level, the salaries of faculty and staff are intensely personal and symbolically meaningful. They are not just dollars, they are messages of the employees' perceived value to the organization and the organization's values regarding fair compensation. Employees have a right to know how their pay is determined and whether they are paid fairly. There should be no ambiguity, no mystery, no shade regarding how salaries are determined and adjusted for existing pay equities. Like with the budget, the educative opportunity to understand this process will, as a matter of course, provide a dialogue within our community and advance its welfare. This type of broad articulation is critical if we are to understand clearly the intentions, aspirations, and realities that are woven into the administration's pay equity adjustment methodology. Again, just 2 quick paragraphs. I beg your mercy on me. Transparency is also essential for another one of the value propositions for President Holloway's administration, the commitment to the ideal of a beloved community. There can be no beloved community if the foundation of trust is absent. There can be no trust if information that reveals intentions, aspirations, and realities are concealed about issues that are pivotal to understanding how pay adjustments are determined. Honest and open conversations, including the sharing of information about what matters to the individual, is at the core of building and sustaining a beloved and engaged community. If these 2 value propositions had consistently informed the pay equity negotiation process, we would have had a settlement months ago that left the faculty as well as the 5 plaintiffs feeling hopeful and fully engaged, not misunderstood and devalued. Nevertheless, I remain hopeful that we will be provided with the necessary information to finally understand how pay equity adjustments are being calculated. We are not there yet, but there has been progress in the direction, just not enough. Transparency is critical to building a trusting relationship with respect to the university's budget as well as pay equity. Obtaining the information we need has been unfortunately and unnecessarily daunting, but we will continue to insist on real transparency and fully expect that the university will imminently provide the information we need to understand the pay equity methodology, and in so doing will bring us closer to the value propositions espoused by President Holloway's administration. Thank you once again, Chair Engelson, Board of Governors, and President Holloway for your time, attention, and indulgence on the clock. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. Mr. President, any remarks from you?
No remarks at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chancellor Cantor, thank you for your hospitality today. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And welcome everybody to Newark. I want to give an update of where Rutgers Newark is in terms of our strategic plan, which began in 2014. We did an update in 2017, and then with the diversity strategic plan that Anna Branch has organized and that we have done, we're going even further. So the core mission of Rutgers Newark, the public mission of Rutgers Newark, is really identified with three sort of facets, if you will. They all intersect, but one is social mobility, a second is high impact scholarship, and a third is our anchor institution engagement in Newark and beyond. And I want to spend some time today talking about how these intersect. So the first thing that we do as we try to pursue social mobility, high impact scholarship, and our anchor institution work is that we create these collaborative tables. Nothing in this domain can be done by ourselves. And a core principle really for Rutgers Newark is that we're creating ecosystems where we're sharing these practices. And so I want to point to a few of the collaborative tables that we are, my team and I are a part of. First, at the core and on the right, well, whichever direction you're in, the shared equity leadership model, which comes out of wonderful work done at USC and in collaboration with ACE. They're doing a long-term study. We are one of 8 institutions nationally being looked at. And the notion here is that really equity has to permeate every aspect of what we're doing. So everybody from student affairs to academic affairs, everybody in terms of students, faculty, and staff, everybody in terms of our community partners, we all need to work together collaboratively. And that's really a core principle, and we are working with the group at USC and ACE to really think about what are the core best practices when it comes to shared equity leadership. And then if we think about the students and we think about social mobility, we're not in this game, if you will, by ourselves. So for example, we are part of APLU's, the Association of Public and Land Grant Universities, powered by Publix, which is really a very long-term and large initiative to try to increase equity in graduation rates and in the transition into careers for students from lots of different backgrounds. We at Rutgers Newark lead the high Pell cluster. That is, we are the lead for a set of institutions that have a high percentage of Pell eligible students. For Rutgers Newark, that's 59% of our undergraduates are Pell eligible. And this has been a really wonderful table to think about things like textbook affordability, to think about food insecurity, to think about what gateway courses do, where people are dropping off and dropping out. So it's been a wonderful collaborative table. And then when we think about anchor institution work, that is the epitome, if you will, of collaborative work. And we're really proud of what's happening in the city of Newark around anchor institution collaboration. I co-chair with Shanae Harris from Prudential, a group, and you see the listing of members. Brian Strom's group is at the table, I'm happy to say. And this is a cross-sector group of Newark anchors. So it's got everything from cultural institutions to educational, to meds, to corporations. And it's a wonderful group looking through a racial equity lens on what it means to do equitable growth in Newark. What does it mean, for example, for Rutgers Newark to really think about how we hire, buy, and live local? What does it mean to really think about how we contribute to analyses of affordable growth in Newark? And the backdrop of all of that, and it's down on the lower part of this slide, is the Anchor Institutions Task Force, which is a national task force. It's now, I'm thrilled to say, up to 1,000 members. I was part of a group for Sean Donovan when he was HUD secretary with Obama that created the notion of an anchor institution task force. And we had, maybe 12 members at that time. Now there are 1,000 people, 1,000 members in this group. But we split into things like economic development, health professionals, anchor partnerships like ours in Newark, educational pathways, and a subgroup of higher ed presidents. And the main point I want to make about this is that nobody does this work alone. This has got to be work that creates ecosystems of collaboration. So let me then get to what we are specifically doing at Rutgers Newark, and again, informed by these collaborative tables. So when I think about what does it mean for us to be investing in social mobility, in high impact scholarship, and in anchor collaboration, these three things all intersect, but let me enter them from different parts of the puzzle, if you will. So when I think about our pantry run, our Rutgers food pantry, at one level, that's entering this puzzle from the social mobility lens. Our large percentage of our students are food insecure, and we have this amazing food pantry that has, in 2020, it gave away nearly 37 tons of food. So at one level, that's entering from the social mobility lens, but it quickly goes into curriculum and into anchor work. So we are, for example, creating a food literacy curriculum as part of the food pantry, and we are collaborating with the Urban Agricultural Cooperative of local growers as part of a sustainability project. So when you think about pantry run, you might think of that as through the lens of social mobility, but you're quickly also talking about scholarship, curriculum, and anchor work. Similarly, we have an amazing program called Lives in Translation, which starts, if you will, through the lens of curriculum and scholarship. Our faculty in Spanish and Portuguese studies, African American and African studies, English, law, and arts, culture, and media all got together to build on what is the incredible multilinguistic talent of our students. So 450 plus Rutgers Newark students are engaged in this project. They speak over 48 different home languages. And what they are doing is both creating a curriculum on translation and interpretation, supported most recently by an NEH grant, but they are also working in the community. So they work with our law clinics to do translation for clients of the law clinic. They work during the pandemic, they worked as contact tracers because multilingual expertise was so important there. So again, you see how on the one hand, it starts as a curricular project, as a scholarly project, and it quickly morphs into something that feeds to the life and social mobility concerns of our students and to the needs of our community. And then if we think about anchor work, one of the projects we're most proud of is we are currently part of an 8-university community national project supported by the Mellon Foundation, centered at the University of Michigan. And this is a project on what university community solutions to reparations would look like, called Crafting Democratic Futures. In our case, we are partnering with the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, the Newark Community Development Network, and the NAACP of Newark. Plus, again, it's an anchor project, but huge numbers of our students, especially in HLLs, in our Honors Living Learning community, who come from Newark and have lived the issues of what redlining does, or lived the legacy of systemic discrimination, they are working as research agents in this university community collaboration. So again, you start from one lens, but you quickly go to all of the others. So let me dig a little deeper here on each of these facets. That is social mobility, high impact scholarship, and anchor institution work. So first of all, in terms of advancing social mobility, we are really deeply on that pathway. So in our outcomes, Rutgers Newark, recently Tony Carnevale at Georgetown did an amazing, very in-depth study, as he always does, of what a 40-year projected return on investment for low-income students would look like. Rutgers Newark is literally among those who have a majority of their students are Pell eligible. We are literally #1 in the nation on projected return on investment. And then if you look at things like diversity of students and faculty, I rarely cite the Wall Street Journal, I have to say, but I will cite them here. They did an analysis of diversity of faculty and students and the amount of environmental climate that is created by that. And we are, again, #1 in the Northeast and #2 nationally. Now, those are all sort of overarching metrics, but what's really important here is what's at the base of that social mobility. And from our perspective, what's at the base of it is, first of all, affordability. The president just talked about the scholarship programs that all of Rutgers have. And we at Rutgers Newark have had Run to the Top very much focused initially on Newark's residents and community college transfers. Now we have opened that up to include higher income levels up to 100,000 and all of New Jersey residents, but we're still very focused on Newark students and greater Newark students. And what we are doing there is really looking at part-time students, which the Garden State Guarantee doesn't cover and which we will cover, and summer courses, which are so critical to creating that pathway. I'm very proud to say that Run to the Top, we have supported since 2016, 5,000 students with full last-in scholarships, including 1,500 from Newark itself. Now, affordability is one piece, but it's only one piece. You have to create expansive pathways. And that's what our Newark City of Learning Collaborative does. That's what our Center for Pre-College Programs does. And let me give you some examples. We're really doing a lot of dual enrollment. Students in Newark, in the high schools in Newark, are coming onto our campus. Thank goodness we're back on campus, and actually taking college courses for credit that gives them dual enrollment. The real thing that does is introduce them to what it means to be on the pathway to college. We're just creating a program we're calling Run Rising, which is to really re-engage individuals who have some credits but no degree from Rutgers Newark. And we're looking first at the Newark and greater Newark area and then beyond, and really trying to bring them in. And then the other thing I would point to, and this is both a pathway, but it's also an affordability issue, is it's extraordinary how many low-income students leave millions of dollars on the table by not filling out FAFSA forms. Now, it's not in some ways extraordinary because those are so complicated to fill out, but what we are doing in Newark and as part of the Newark City of Learning Collaborative is going around doing workshops on FAFSA filling out with families in the public libraries and in the schools. Now, it's one thing to think about affordability, to think about pathways through. The next thing is pathway to what if we're creating social mobility? And we're very proud of our association with the Braven nonprofit program and with other career programs that we're doing. But Braven in particular is focused on first generation, low income, especially students of color. And so they love coming here because that's so many of our students. They have to date given their full credit course plus mentors from local corporations and nonprofits to 680 Rutgers Newark students. And the data are really impressive. So if you look at the 6 months out first jobs of these students relative to the predicted jobs based on national norms for those students from those backgrounds, we are at least 25 percentage points better than the national norm. So let me take another minute here to talk about pathways to success, because I just can't emphasize enough how critical that is to what we're doing. So the pathways to success, probably the prototype that we have at Rutgers Newark, many of you know about, is our Honors Living Learning community. And I would urge you, if you want to take a walk today, to go walk through the building. It's incredible. It's finally up and open, and there are students in it. The honors living learning community is really turning out to be, and I say with total bias, a true national model for what it means to really dig deep in thinking about the talent that is out there and not thinking of it through a deficit lens, but thinking of it through an asset lens. That is really looking at what the amazing diversity of students bring to the table. So it's an 18 credit minor organized around leadership and social justice. And we have pathways then within that. So Prudential has a pathway that has an urban solutions lab and entrepreneurship. PSE&G has a STEAM pathway, STEM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And the Mellon Foundation has supported a humanities pathway. The data on the demographics of our HLC students is incredible. But in addition to that, what I want to point to is the lived experiences they bring to the table. So when we study what criminal justice system has done, there's nobody better than an HLC student who has been incarcerated and is now getting their degree here to tell you what it's like and what it has meant. The other thing about HLC is that it intersects with all of our other programs. So they go across the street from 48 New Street, where the building is, to the Haynes Building, to Express Newark, and they are part of the socially engaged justice program in Express Newark. And then in case we think that STEM pathways, for example, are off to the side, that those don't have anything to do with creating social mobility, they certainly do. And our faculty are deeply focused on what it means to create STEM pathways that are broad and embracing of the talent of our students. So Ashanti Roof, for example, just got a Claire Booth Luce grant to look at STEM scholarships for women in computer science, physics, math, and geoscience and chemistry. We have an amazing new big data minor and data science minor that has an everyday data piece of it that Nicole Richardson in math and computer science is doing. And in case you were one of those people, I certainly was, that gave up on chemistry and ever being a doctor because chemistry was so boring and organic chemistry was impossible. I certainly did. I don't know about you. Well, what we have is we have Courtney Sobers-Swindle, who's doing gamifying, creating I don't even know how you do this, but creating games as part of organic chemistry to really entice a broader range of people into it. So when I talk about enticing people into it, we're talking about what it means to empower diverse voices, what it really means to get the diversity bonus on the table. And the way to do that is, first of all, in our P3 collaboratory, which is pedagogy, professional development, and publicly engaged scholarship, they're really looking in depth at what it means to have difficult conversations, what it means to think about trauma-informed pedagogy, what it means to think about inclusive pedagogy. And then we're thinking about our staff. So we are very committed to hiring locally. We have a very diverse staff. And we are doing mentoring sessions through our staff council, for example. Or our TRHT, it's a national model, the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Center at Newark, part of AAC&U's national group. I think Camden just got one, right, Antonia? And I can't say enough about how important TRHT is, but it's really going out. So the mayor came and asked if we could partner with the city of Newark as they opened their Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma to create racial healing circles and curriculum in the summer for opportunity youth. Well, who better to do that than to train our NJ STEP students, our reentry students who are part of our NJ STEP program as TRHT facilitators. And they did it last summer and to huge success, and it is continuing. And then I want to point out that empowering diverse voices means empowering diverse faculty. So for example, Patricia Akimi is doing, as part of a broad national Mellon project, is doing pre-modern race scholars. What does that mean? It's a field that rarely had any kind of diversity in it, and they're doing mentoring to empower those voices. So part of empowering diverse voices is that what you're really doing is you're weaving lived experiences into directly the high impact scholarship that individual faculty and students and staff and community members engage in. And this is just a quick view of a variety of our high impact scholarship where lived experience is really being brought to the table. President Holloway had, I think, the pleasure of attending our Black Portraitures play and performance MTW conference, both in Express Newark. There's an amazing exhibit of Black girls play, which I urge you all today, if you have any time, to go over there. It's a phenomenal exhibit. Black artists age 8 to 94 are exhibiting in that exhibit. It's just phenomenal. And then the MTW lecture, to the 42nd MTW lecture, was this past weekend on play and performance. And again, really weaving in what it means to bring to the table who you are, where you've been, what your history is, to make it visible and impactful. And then, for example, James Jones in our political science department is working on, and Pete McDonough and I have been talking about this. We want a center for politics and race. He's been working on how really diversity is not woven into Congress. How, for example, he did a very extensive analysis of the pay of interns in Congress, which was supposed to boost diversity, but instead most of the money went to white students. Similarly, Domingo Morel has looked at when you get the kinds of voter suppression laws that are coming into play now, how those relate to local power that got more diverse. Diane Wong has done an amazing set of studies about really that the answer to anti-Asian violence is not more policing, but more understanding and more examination of culture and really putting forth what culture means. And one of my favorites, quite some time ago, Wyla Eason, faculty member at RBS, really, she turned to her young son and said, you know, couldn't you be a He-Man hero? And he said, no, I'm Black, I can't be that. So she created Sunman from Mattel and then created her own business, and it's quite remarkable. So final two slides. Lived experiences is not just woven locally. And this is something I always want to emphasize with people. People think when you do anchor work, when you do work of engaging, for example, Newark students, are you doing it in a parochial way? Are you doing it only locally? Well, if you look around the city of Newark and you talk to the students we're engaging and the faculty and our community partners, within 5 minutes, you realize that the entire world is here if you trace the connections. And so we've been spending our time tracing local to global to local connections. We have our wonderful Office of Global Initiatives and Experiential Learning. And let me give you one example. We go to Shabazz High School, we create solar suitcases in Shabazz High School in their STEM lab. Those then are taken by our students to Puerto Rico, to Tanzania, etc., installed in communities globally, and then come back locally to create what it means to think about sustainable urban cooperatives and agriculture here. So you see a full circle. Similarly, we have a wonderful project, our historians, called Mediterranean Displacements Projects. And one of the reasons that they wanted to look at refugee migration and immigration and the road to that in the Mediterranean is that so many of our students actually come from global families that trace those same roots. So when they engage our students are taking the story locally, going globally, and bringing it back locally. And the best way to bring it back is our newest American story bus. You see here Mayor Baraka and his son standing in front of the story bus. This goes all around Newark and greater Newark, getting the stories of individuals and their lived experiences. And then finally, if we think about anchor scholarship, what it really means to be an anchor institution, to be of a community and with a community, all of the things I've talked about, both the social mobility and the high impact scholarship, come out in what one can do in collaborating in community. So for example, our School of Criminal Justice is at the core of a Newark anchor collaborative about public safety. Huge number of community groups, community street teams, law enforcement sit at the table, and our scholars. And what they are doing is they are providing risk terrain analyses, not analyses of who commits crimes, but analyses of where crimes are committed. What are the characteristics of the areas where crimes are committed? Are they vacant lots? Are they people leaving their cars with keys in them in front of a bodega? How do you then do enforcement that is sensitive to the place and not to criminalizing the people? It's been incredibly successful. Or we think about the kinds of educational programs, the Freedom School that the Cornwall Center has been involved in creating in Newark, the Inclusion Project that Elise Bonney is doing with lots of other people around the state, suing the state, in fact, on school desegregation. You may not know that the state of New Jersey has the 6th most segregated schools in the country, quite surprising. So education, public safety, of course, the arts is so critical to everything about what it means to create voice and civic democracy and equitable growth in a place, wonderful place like Newark with its history. So we have this amazing, for example, City Versus Jazz and Poetry collaboration with New Jersey Performing Arts Center and our Institute of Jazz Study and our creative writing program, gone all over the city, and because of the pandemic, did it virtually to thousands of people around the world, really putting forth the history of jazz poetry and the voice that is behind that. And then there's the nuts and bolts, if you will, of equitable economic development. The affordable housing work that David Trout's done from the law school that now creates the platform for the mayor's equitable growth advisory commission that he is on, to really think about how Newark can have capital investment, but not gentrification, and what that will mean. Or the supply chain work that Kevin Lyons is doing amazingly from RBS, really mapping all the available local businesses and entrepreneurs that we can all buy procurement resources from. And of course, where's Mike? There's Mike, the supplier diversity initiative that Mike is leading will feed right into what it means to buy locally. And then one of my favorites that is now developing, the School of Public Affairs and Administration, is partnering with the Citizens Campaign throughout New Jersey to think about what no blame conversations look like. Just think for a minute if we had civic conversations that didn't start with blame. But that's not an easy thing. As a social psychologist, I'll tell you, that's not an easy thing. And you really need training for that. And so SPA is stepping in to collaborate. So this brings me full circle really to the public mission. And that is that what Rutgers Newark is doing, faculty, staff, students, and community partners all together, all really collaborating amazingly, is to make our curriculum, our scholarship, our anchor work open to the public and with the public. So I think of it as a two-way street between this institution and our community and the world beyond that. So thank you. take questions, but I,
Thank you very
Thank-
much, Dr. Cantor. Questions or comments from members of the board? We have one. Dr. Zubair, please.
Excellent presentation and great job, and appreciate what you all do for the community. So I have 2 cents into it. Being a physician in Newark area, so I see we can do heart transplant, lung transplant, liver transplant in Newark, but we have a difficulty treating bronchitis, UTI, and wound care. The community has not that many places to go. How I relate to our university and students are, many of our students, if you go to their homes, they wake up in the morning without mother and father. There's no refrigerator with the food, and they need to come to university and be educated in the classes. I think I will say to the leadership, we need to look beyond when these kids come to school. Is there breakfast available for them?
Yep.
Do they have energy to even sit in the classes? Is there healthcare issues which is our committee deal, healthcare committee,
Right.
are fulfilled there? I think it's a great what you do. I think we're gonna continue to do much more to serve this community. Like you said, there's so much talent sitting here in Newark. All kind of community sitting there. It's a brilliant students and kids there. So let's bring them together. Thank you.
music to my ears. And by the way, one of the reasons I showed you the food pantry is that that's exactly one of the issues that we call it opening the suitcase. We start, for example, with food insecurity, but when you open the suitcase, what you find is health issues, you find mental health issues, you find homelessness and housing insecurity, you find broadband problems, you find a whole set of things that really have nothing to do with the individual student and their talent or their potential. It has everything to do with the systemic discrimination that's been out there. So I totally agree.
Yes, agree. No question about it. And I think this is start. You guys doing an amazing job. No question about it. But as a community, I think we gotta continue to do what we're doing.
I totally agree. And one of the things that we've been talking about in the Newark Anchor Collaborative, for example, because University Hospital is at the table there, but one of the things we've been talking about is, we need, for example, there are no local doctor's offices in Newark. We need them in every neighborhood. We need access to healthcare on the ground, for example.
In the same example, what you said, during pandemic, they shut the schools down, right?
Right.
What was the biggest issue? Kids having no lunch and breakfast and dinner.
Exactly. And
So-
actually, the Newark public schools were amazing in that they opened up the food opened the schools for food drop-offs. for
Exactly.
families.
When they open
Yeah.
up for the kids, next thing they realize the parents are coming.
Right.
They have no lunch. Thank you.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you again, Dr. Cantor. Thank you very much. We're running a little bit behind. And with that, Chair Hundley, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Academic and Student Affairs met on February 10th, 2022. The meeting was held virtually via Zoom, and I presided. The meeting was called to order at 1 p.m. The meeting began with proposed resolutions establishing the Master of Arts in Emerging Media and Master of Professional Studies degree program at the Graduate School Camden. Dr. Daniel Hart, Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost for Rutgers University Camden, presented 2 intertwined degree programs within the Graduate School Camden for endorsement by the committee. He stated that the first, a Master of Arts in Emerging Media, will be a 2-year, 36-credit degree program based on theoretical approaches and practical skills in areas such as digital storytelling, interactive design, digital art, digital writing, creative coding, and digital archives. He added that the second, a Master of Professional Studies in Emerging Media, would be a 30-credit program that could be completed in 1 year. The committee agreed to endorse the resolutions for board approval, and that both have been placed on today's consent agenda. Moving into points of information, Dr. Brian Strom, Chancellor for Rutgers Biomedical and Health Sciences, spoke about 3 programs of conversion to option to full program. All 3 were Bachelor of Science programs in the School of Health Professions. The first being psychiatric rehabilitation, the second being diagnostic medical sonography, and the third being cardiovascular sonography. Dr. Strom advised the committee that the concentration in psychiatric rehabilitation within the existing Bachelor of Science in Health Sciences offered by the School of Health Professions is being converted to full program status with degree designation change to Bachelor of Science in Psychiatric Rehabilitation. He added that students will take the New Jersey required general education and prerequisite courses at another college or university and the professional credits at the School of Health Professions. Chancellor Strom next stated that the BS in Medical Imaging Sciences, concentration in diagnostic medical sonography, is being converted to full program status with degree designation changed to Bachelor of Science in Diagnostic Medical Sonography. Again, allowing students to take the New Jersey required general education and prerequisite courses at any college or university, and then finish the professional phase of the degree at the School of Health Professions. Lastly, Chancellor Strom continued, stating that the BS in Medical Imaging Sciences concentration in cardiac sonography is being converted to the Bachelor of Science in Diagnostic Medical Sonography, where the students will take the New Jersey General Required Education and prerequisite courses at the college or university of their choice and complete the professional phase of the degree at the School of Health Professions. Lastly, Dr. Strom spoke about a graduate certificate in essentials of occupational health and safety and health risk at the School of Public Health. Chancellor Strom stated that the School of Public Health would offer the standalone graduate certificate in essentials of occupational safety and health risks. He noted that this 12-credit certificate will provide training in occupational safety and health for the future public health professionals and other professionals who will manage the complexities of safety and health for private sector or government agency workplaces. Moving to New Brunswick, Chancellor Francine Conway, Chancellor Provost of Rutgers University, New Brunswick, advised the committee that the Graduate School of Education will offer a graduate certificate in athletic coaching and education jointly with the Graduate School of Applied and Professional Psychology. Chancellor Conway explained that this 15-credit certificate is being designed for those working or interested in working as a sports professional at the elementary, secondary, and post-secondary levels. Next, Chancellor Conway spoke about the graduate certificate in adult and continuing education offered by the Graduate School of Education, stating that it would offer a graduate certificate in adult and continuing education. She stated that this 12-credit program is designed for individuals working in adult education settings, and it will be offered online. Lastly, Dr. Nancy Cantor, Chancellor of Rutgers University, Newark, advised the committee that the total credit requirements for the PhD in psychology degree program offered by the Graduate School Newark are being changed from 72 to 60 credits. She stated that this adjustment is based upon the changing the required research credits from 38 to 24 and the course credits from 34 to 36, bringing the program more in line with the Graduate School Newark's requirement of a total of 60 credits for doctoral programs. The committee then met in executive session to discuss personnel matters, including faculty tenure appointment recommendations. The committee agreed to endorse these recommendations for board approval, and they have also been placed on today's consent agenda. The committee adjourned at 3 p.m. And Mr. Chair, this concludes my report on the Committee of Academic and Student Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Hundley. Questions or comments for Frank? Ron, Chair Banks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Finance and Facilities met on the 10th of February virtually. Under matters for action, Mr. Michael Gower, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, presented for endorsement the proposed resolution authorizing an increase to public exigency contract with Vault Medical Services of New Jersey, PC, to provide physician-ordered COVID-19 testing. This resolution will authorize the university to increase the public exigency bid waivered contract from just over $2 million to an amount not to exceed $4,967,000 through June 30th, 2023. Due to the ongoing nature of the pandemic, this will allow the university to continue to use Vault Medical Services and facilitate the purchase of additional physician-ordered COVID-19 tests to meet the university's needs. Mr. Chair, the resolution is found under the consent agenda. Mr. Antonio Calcado, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, presented for endorsement the proposed resolution approving the sale of 146 through 152 and 158 Washington Street in Newark, New Jersey. This proposed resolution would allow the university to sell these underutilized properties that are not part of the campus long-term master plan and to use the proceeds to fund the acquisition and renovation of property consistent with the master plan for Rutgers University Newark campus. Mr. Chair, the resolution is found under the consent agenda. Under matters for information, Mr. David Moore, Associate Vice President and Chief Budget Officer, presented the fiscal year 2022 financial report that compared the revenue and expense performance through December 31st, 2021 to the overall fiscal year budget of fiscal year 2022. Mr. Moore explained to the committee that through December, most of the university's revenue categories were on track to achieve the level of revenues approved in the fiscal year 22 budget. Mr. Moore then reviewed the expense categories that showed each of them below or at the level of expenditures experienced in the previous 3 fiscal years. Mr. Moore explained that this is largely due to the continued efforts to contain and reduce discretionary spending. Mr. Gower gave an overview of federal and state COVID relief funds, sharing with the committee that Rutgers was fortunate to be awarded $128 million of emergency direct student relief aid and $241 million in institutional funds from federal and state relief funds to assist the university during these uncertain economic times. Mr. Gower explained that Rutgers received a total of $134.4 million from the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act funding. And as of December 31st, all funds have been spent on the highest priorities. Mr. Gower then explained to the committee that of the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act funding, Rutgers received a total of $85.3 million. As of December 31st, approximately $637,000 remained and would be used for additional financial aid and to provide support for safe and responsive academic and student life support services. Mr. Gower concluded his presentation with an overview of the American Rescue Plan funding. The ARP funds will be used to, number 1, provide direct student payments, number 2, provide safe and ongoing COVID testing sites to suppress the virus, number 3, provide additional financial aid support from the institutional portion, number 4, offset lost revenues, and number 5, provide program support for a safe and healthy return to the campuses. Mr. William Troy, Executive Director of Risk Management and Insurance, followed with his overview of the university's insurance programs. Mr. Troy pointed out some of the insurance renewal challenges to the committee, reviewing the current year premium cost that showed an overall 16.8% increase over the prior years. Mr. Troy provided a detailed review of the insurance programs as well as discussed the opportunities and challenges that the university may face with these programs. Mr. Chair, that concludes the report from February 10th, 2022.
Thank you, Chair Banks. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Keith? Hearing none, please, Chair Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Audit met on Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022. The meeting was called to order at 9 a.m. in a hybrid format of in-person and Zoom participation. Ms. Shelley Massey, KPMG Lead Partner, and Ms. Lauren Swigard, KPMG Senior Manager, gave the committee a brief update on the status of the auditor's report on the financial statements of the university and other deliverables for the firm's 2021 audit. The agreed upon procedures report on the university's intercollegiate athletics programs for the year ended June 30th, 2021 was issued on January 13th, 2022 to meet the requirements to file with the university president. The single audit reports for the year ended June 30th, 2021, normally expected to be issued by March 31st of 22, are delayed, as are the university's financial statements, because of information not yet provided by the state. However, there is an extension in filing the report with the U.S. government this year. Mr. J. Michael Gower, Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and University Treasurer, reviewed the report of professional services of $100,000 or more, which lists service providers, the type of services they deliver, and their total paid fee amounts for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021. Mr. Kim Yazgat, Chief Healthcare Risk Officer, provided an overview of the Rutgers Biomedical and Health Sciences Medical Malpractice Program. Key points for the committee included a brief history, current levels of coverage, renewal challenges, recent claim activity, and loss prevention activities. Mr. Matt Poroff, Senior Associate Athletic Director and Chief Compliance Officer, provided an overview of the Office of Athletic Compliance within the university's Division of Intercollegiate Athletics, including office structure, governing entities, major compliance regulations, and recent updates. Mr. Eugene Simon, Associate Vice President and Deputy Chief Enterprise Risk Management, Ethics and Compliance Officer, provided an update on the office's billing and coding audit group, including an overview, benchmarks, and the work plan status. Ms. Ruth Philo, Chief Audit Executive, updated the committee on personnel changes, audit process enhancements, and status of past audits. She also discussed the progress made on the 2022 audit plan and the department's continued efforts in quality assurance and advisory support for the university's current ERP implementation projects. The committee then met in private executive session with Mr. Gower, Mr. Simon, and Mr. John J. Hoffman, General Counsel, and then with Mr. Gower and Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report on the Committee on Audit.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Any questions or comments from members of the board for Heather? Hearing none. Chair Robbins Towers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Committee on Health Affairs met this month on February 8th here in Newark in the Stanley Bergen Building. Dr. Frank Ganassi, President and Chief Executive Officer of University Behavioral Healthcare and University Correctional Healthcare, cited 3 matters that require the committee's endorsement to move forward for the Board of Governors approval. Number 1, minutes of the University Behavioral Healthcare Leadership Committee meetings in September and November of 2021. Number 2, University Behavioral Healthcare staff appointments, reappointments, and clinical privileges of November 16th, 2021, and also January 18th of 2022. And 3rd, the University Behavioral Healthcare's quality improvement report for the 2nd and 3rd quarters of 2021. All 3 of these matters were endorsed by the committee and will be moved under the consent agenda. Dr. Ganassi then continued his update by highlighting the Brandt Behavioral Health Treatment Center and residents' groundbreaking ceremony on October 12th, 2021. He also reviewed recent grants received by UBHC and updated the committee on various call lines, including the nurse to nurse and fire EMS call lines, which he explained are now active. Dr. Ganassi then reviewed FY21 financial results through October 31st, 2021, and discussed recruitment efforts and new appointments within UBHC, as well as the triennial survey conducted by the Joint Commission in late March. Dr. Ganassi concluded his update with a review of data related to patient satisfaction and patient no-show rates. We continued our meeting with Dr. Sherry Wong, Vice Chancellor, Graduate Medical Education, Enterprise-Wide Designated Institutional Official, presented on the Rutgers Health Annual Institutional Review. She began her presentation by reviewing the strategic goals for establishing the Graduate Medical Education Program at Rutgers Biomedical and Health Sciences, as well as the plan to accomplish these goals. She reviewed data submitted to the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, ACGME, as well as ACGME citations over the 132 programs within RBHS. She explained there were no institutional citations and that it is important to analyze the areas of the citations to continue to improve. Dr. Huang then reviewed the site visits that ACGME conducted the prior year, as well as the ongoing surveys that are currently taking place. She further explained that RBHS continues to increase its full-time employee numbers in various programs and reviewed key metrics used to assess academic medical centers. She noted that RBHS is doing particularly well in the underrepresented in medicine ratio and reviewed the matched trainee characteristics at each hospital site. Dr. Wang concluded by reviewing her expectations for growth, the next steps to streamline and integrate programs, and her aspirations for graduate medical education for the year 2025. We continued our meeting with Dr. Bashir Omari, Senior Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and Research, who presented on the RBHS strategic plan. He first reviewed the shared goal for RBHS and key initiatives within the 2014 RBHS strategic plan, as well as the key outcomes related to those initiatives. He discussed factors that prompted the current strategic planning process and reviewed President Holloway's guiding values that will influence the 2022 RBHS strategic plan. He reviewed the charge to the Strategic Planning Steering Committee, overarching themes, and cross-cutting areas that are woven throughout the plan, and internal and external stakeholder engagements. He also elaborated on the aspirational identity statements, unifying themes, and mission-based goals of the plan. Lastly, he focused on how the 2022 RBHS strategic plan would be implemented and elaborated on the implementation, monitoring, and assessment team, and reviewed the dashboard that will be used to report out annually. Then Dr. Vincent Gracias, Senior Vice Chancellor for Clinical Affairs and Vice President for Health Affairs, updated the Committee on Rutgers Health. He began the presentation with a COVID-19 update and elaborated on the university's vaccine requirements. Dr. Gracias then discussed health education and reviewed the Health Education Executive Committee 2022 priorities. He also discussed the Rutgers Health Emergency Medicine Service Line and explained the near-term goals for that service line. Dr. Gracias then highlighted the recently launched Student Nurse Reservist Program and highlighted the development of the Rutgers Health Service Corps, an interprofessional corps of students from various Rutgers schools engaged in supervised efforts to improve public and population health across the university and statewide. Lastly, Dr. Gracias provided an overview of the key performance indicators dashboard and reviewed the evolution of our dashboard. Dr. Brian Strom, Chancellor for Rutgers Biomedical and Health Sciences and Executive Vice President for Health Affairs, stated his goal as Chancellor and reviewed RBHS statistics at a glance. Dr. Strom discussed the Rutgers RWJ Barnabas Rising Stars program and highlighted 12 new fellows from Rutgers University elected to the American Association for the Advancement of Science, noting that 6 were RBHS faculty members. Dr. Strom also reviewed ongoing searches, new appointments, and provided an overview of RBHS extramural awards. Dr. Strom moved on to a COVID-19 update and reviewed COVID-19 data. He explained that the pandemic is transitioning to endemic and discussed support services available to citizens within the state, members of the Rutgers community with regard to mental health issues. Finally, Dr. Strom provided a capital planning update and outlined the RBHS Newark Physical Master Plan. Finally, Ms. Kathleen Bramwell, Senior Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration, provided an update on RBHS budget and reviewed RBHS financial performance for the second quarter of fiscal year 2022. This concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for Amy? And finally, in terms of committee reports, Acting Chair Derek, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good.
And we
Okay.
can see you.
The Committee on Intercollegiate Athletics met on February 16th at the Rodkin Academic Success Center. It began with Mr. Patrick Hobbs, Director of Intercollegiate Athletics for Rutgers University, New Brunswick, welcomed the committee members to the Gary and Barbara Rodkin Center for Academic Success Center. He highlighted the success of the center, noting the students studying throughout the committee member, noting the number of students who were there as the committee members entered the building. Mr. Hobbs also announced the division's 4th Wayne Duke Postgraduate Award, an annual scholarship recognizing one male and one female Big Ten senior for exceptional achievement in academics, athletics, and civic service. He noted that a Rutgers student athlete has received the award 4 out of the last 7 years, a feat no other school in the Big Ten has accomplished. Mr. Hobbs also stated that the Division of Intercollegiate Athletics has moved up in the Learfield Cup at a breakneck pace from 117 in 2016 to 28 at the end of fall 2021. Mr. Hasim Phillips, Associate Athletic Director for Media and Public Relations, highlighted the recent winning streak of Rutgers teams, particularly men's basketball's 3 wins over ranked opponents in a row, and the upcoming game that night. He also highlighted awards received by the division's student athletes, recent school records broken, and highlighted the recent football recruiting class. Mr. Scott Walker, Executive Director for Academic Services, provided the committee with an update on academics, reviewing the aggregate grade point average, GPA, by sport over a 5-year period, a Dean's List comparison over a 3-year period by sport, and the National Collegiate Athletics Association, NCAA, graduation success rate for cohorts 2011 to 2014. Dr. Joshua Bershad, Chief Medical Officer, updated the committee on the sports medicine program. Dr. Bershad reviewed the history and parameters of a division-requested internal assessment by the U.S. Council for Athletes' Health, as well as the mission and core values for the sports medicine program. He highlighted improvements in the structure for physicians, athletic trainers, nutrition, physical therapy, and mental health services for student athletes. Mr. Jeffrey Poulard, Assistant Athletic Director for Compliance and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, reviewed name, image, and likeness court cases and legislation that allows student athletes to receive compensation for their image and likeness and hire agents. Mr. Poulard next reviewed the pending legislation in the state of New Jersey and discussed the permissions and also the limitations, such as specific band endorsements and limitations on institutional assistance. He also explained that the division is working on updating the R-Edge NIL directory of social media handles, updating the co-branding and trademark licensing process, and monitoring national trends in order to learn best practices and stay current. Mr. Antonio Calcado, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, and Mr. David Schultz, Vice President for Planning, Development, and Design, provided an update on athletic facilities. And the meeting was adjourned at approximately 5 p.m. after starting at 2 p.m. And I thank you all, and this concludes the report.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Marge? Thank you very much. Mr. Hundley, the floor is yours yet again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there any items that the members of the board would like to remove from today's consent agenda? Hearing none, upon recommendation of the Committee of Academic and Student Affairs, the Committee on Finance and Facilities, and the Committee of Health Affairs, I move that the board approve the items contained in today's consent agenda.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Any objections? It's passed. Thank you very much. Before I call on and recognize John Oliver for a special report today, I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize 3 additional people who are with us today. First, Sam Rabinowitz, who is our faculty member here. Thank you, Sam, yet again for doing this. Thank you, thank you. Malachi Sutton, who is with us electronically, is our student representative, and our Vice Chancellor, Sherry Butterfield. Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you again for your hospitality today. Thank you very, very much. John Oliver, thank you for everything as always, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a brief report before the resolution. The Senate this year continues its very full agenda this academic year. Our committees continue to work on 23 current charges, many scheduled to report out before the end of this semester. These charges include reviews of the university patent policy, graduate student education and research, review of the Code of Student Conduct, academic freedom, and PTL pay and recognition, to name a few. As always, I would be pleased to provide more details about Senate charges and recommendations to any who have an interest. The Senate this year will host the first Big Ten Academic Alliance Senate Leaders Conference at Rutgers in April. This conference will showcase Rutgers and provide the opportunity for Senate leaders from all Big Ten schools to discuss issues of importance to us all. I will be providing invitations to this board for events very shortly. As President Holloway previously mentioned, he began a new tradition within the Senate this month. In addition to his President's State of the University address in the fall, he provided and will provide each year going forward the State of the University Finances address at the February Senate meeting. I'm excited and grateful that he has chosen the Senate for this new tradition. President Holloway, the chancellors, and vice presidents continue to be very engaged with the Senate, demonstrating their commitment to shared governance. June 30th will mark the end of my term as Senate chair, and the Senate will elect new leadership in April to begin their terms in July of 22. I will provide more information in the election results at my final report to you in June. The Senate will soon discuss how to conduct our business with meetings that occur both on campus and with the virtual option. As you know, the Senate is large and will require an infrastructure and processes that provide for debate and secure voting that can easily include those in the room as well as those online. And I will provide more information shortly. As you know, the University Senate experienced the loss of 3 senators at the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. I'd like to briefly acknowledge each of them. We lost our colleague, Bruce Marich, alumni senator. Bruce was a Rutgers College alum, class of 1963, and the Graduate School, New Brunswick, 1965. Bruce was a new senator excited to join our ranks and participate in shared governance. I also need to acknowledge the passing of another Senate colleague, Paul Moranti. Paul was on the faculty at RBS in the accounting department. He joined RBS in 1981 and for a time served as Associate Dean for Faculty and Research. This December, the Senate also suffered the loss of a senator who filled many roles. These include a past chair, vice chair, chair of the University Structure and Governance Committee, Senate parliamentarian, and also my friend, Peter Gillett. Peter succumbed to an aggressive form of lung cancer. He learned of this diagnosis in the summer of 21 and began treatment in the fall. Peter never slowed down, never stopped teaching, and never stopped fully engaging in all his Senate responsibilities. His loss will be felt by me and the Senate for a very long time. Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to read the memorial resolution for Dr. Peter Gillett. Let it be recorded in deepest sorrow that Dr. Peter R. Gillett, former faculty representative to the Board of Governors and former chair of the Rutgers University Senate, died on December 26, 2021 at the age of 68. Peter joined the Rutgers family in 1996 and enjoyed a long and distinguished career as an associate professor in the Rutgers Business School. Throughout his tenure, Peter displayed an unwavering dedication to service, most notably through his membership on the Rutgers University Senate for 20 years, which included 4 terms as vice chair and 3 terms as chair of the University Senate, and numerous other roles such as parliamentarian, chair of the University Senate's ad hoc task force on shared governance, and co-chair of the University Structure and Governance Committee. Peter embodied a deep commitment to shared governance and its essential role in creating a vibrant university community, having served 3 terms as a faculty representative to the Board of Governors and as a member of the Board of Governors Committees on Academic and Student Affairs and University Relations. Peter's pride for Rutgers and reverence for this university's traditions were evident as he led the academic procession at many Rutgers University commencement ceremonies as University Gonfalonier and Head Marshal. A spirited and likable person, trusted colleague, and wise counselor, Peter was truly a man of high integrity and conviction, and he will be sorely missed by all of us in the Rutgers community. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Governors of Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, that as an expression of the board and the university in grateful remembrance of Dr. Peter R. Gillett's dedication and service to Rutgers, this memorial shall be recorded in the minutes of the Board of Governors, and be it further resolved that a copy of this memorial be sent to the Gillett family along with the board's heartfelt and deepest condolences. Board of Governors, Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, February 23rd, 2022. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair Oliver. Do I have a second? Thank you. Any objections? By acclamation. Is there any old business for this board? Is there any new business for this board? Before we adjourn, Mr. President, as always, the last word is yours.
No further words, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
we are adjourned.